Did Jesus' disciples actually fast? You might be surprised by the answer. While Jesus' own words hinted at what was to come, the Bible and early church history reveals something fascinating about how fasting became a powerful part of their spiritual lives. And here's the big question: how does that affect Christians today? Stick with me because we're diving into Scripture and uncovering a surprising detail you may never have noticed about the disciples and fasting. I'm Pastor Ted Shuttlesworth, and at ChristianFastingGuide.com, my goal is to equip believers like you with the tools needed to grow spiritually and walk in God's power. Let's start with a scene from Matthew chapter 9, verses 14 and 15. The Pharisees came to Jesus with a question: why don't your disciples fast like John's disciples or like us? Jesus gave an interesting response. He said, can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away, and then they will fast. Here's what he meant. Fasting is often tied to longing, mourning, or seeking God in a deeper way. While Jesus was physically with his disciples, they were in the presence of the bridegroom, a time for joy, not fasting. But Jesus also pointed to a future time when he would no longer be with them, and that's when fasting would become a part of their lives. So during Jesus' earthly ministry, the disciples didn't fast, but that doesn't mean they ignored the practice altogether. It just wasn't the right time for it. After Jesus ascended, everything changed. The early church embraced fasting as a regular practice. Look at Acts chapter 13, verses 2 and 3. The church in Antioch fasted and prayed before sending out Paul and Barnabas for missionary work. Or Acts chapter 14, verse 23, where they fasted and prayed when appointing elders in new churches. Fasting became part of how the early church sought God's guidance and spiritual power. It was no longer about mourning Jesus' absence, but about aligning themselves with his mission and drawing closer to him in their daily lives. And here's something really fascinating. The Didache, an early Christian manual from the 1st or 2nd century, gives us a glimpse into how important fasting was for the early church. It encouraged believers to fast twice a week, specifically on Wednesdays and Fridays, as a way to stay disciplined and focused on God. They even fasted before baptisms and other significant spiritual events. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a rhythm of life for early Christians. So why did the disciples and the early church fast? It wasn't just a ritual, it was a way to deepen their connection with God and prepare for spiritual challenges. In Matthew 17:21, Jesus said, "This kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." Some spiritual battles require a deeper level of discipline and focus, and fasting is part of that. Fasting also humbled them before God. Psalm 35:13 says, "I humbled my soul with fasting." The disciples understood that fasting wasn't about earning favor with God, but about surrendering their desires to focus on his will. For the disciples, fasting became a powerful tool to stay spiritually grounded and to seek clarity in moments of decision. They fasted to hear God's voice and to align themselves with his purpose for their lives. So what does this mean for us? If the disciples and the early church found fasting essential for spiritual growth, why wouldn't we? Fasting helps us step away from distractions and focus fully on God. It teaches us to deny our flesh and build spiritual discipline. And just like the early church, we can use fasting as a way to seek God's guidance in big decisions or breakthrough in spiritual battles. But here's the key. It's not about the act of fasting itself. It's about the heart behind it. Fasting is a way to say, God, I need you more than I need this food, this comfort, or this distraction. It's about prioritizing him above all else. So here's my challenge to you. If you've never fasted before, why not start? Begin with a simple fast. Maybe skip one meal or set aside time to fast and pray over a specific need. And if you're ready to dive deeper, I've got two great resources to help you. First, grab my free fasting starter kit. It's packed with practical tips and biblical guidance to get you started. And if you want to dig even further into the biblical foundation of fasting, check out my book, A Complete Guide to Biblical Fasting. Both links are in the description below, so don't wait. Start experiencing the power of fasting right now. If you enjoyed this video, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you're ready to take the next step in your fasting journey, you won't want to miss this video, A Beginner's Guide to Fasting, 15 essential steps. In it, I break down everything you need to know to start fasting with confidence and purpose. Tap or click the screen now, and let's get started on this journey of personal spiritual growth.